For years, news about new fighter jets in South Asia usually followed the same pattern: leaks, rumors, unnamed officials, or analysts arguing on TV panels. Most of it was noise. This time was different. Pakistan's official government X account confirmed the acquisition of 40 J-35 stealth fighters. No ambiguity, no sources say, no trial balloon. This was a state-level declaration. That alone should make you pause. When a government openly acknowledges buying fifth-generation stealth aircraft, it's not just making a military purchase, it's sending a strategic signal to rivals, allies, and arms suppliers watching closely. To understand why this matters, think of air power like a chessboard. For years, India held the psychological edge by being the bigger economy, buying expensive Western jets, and talking openly about future fifth-generation plans. Pakistan, by comparison, was seen as reactive, relying on older platforms and upgrades. The J-35 announcement flips that board. Fifth-generation fighters aren't just faster planes with better paint. They combine stealth, sensors, data fusion, and networking. They don't fight alone. They see more, coordinate more, and strike first. Introducing them into a region doesn't slowly change the balance. It reshapes it overnight. That's why this announcement is a strategic inflection point. South Asia moves from a conventional air competition into a stealth-era contest, and Pakistan is no longer waiting on the sidelines. But this raises an obvious question, one many people immediately jump to online. Pakistan's economy is under pressure. Its foreign reserves are tight. So how can it afford 40 fifth-generation fighters, which usually cost tens or even hundreds of millions per unit? And the second, more uncomfortable question follows right behind it. If Pakistan is already moving into the fifth-generation era, what does India do next? Does it double down on expensive Western fighters? Does it wait for its own programs? Or does it risk falling behind in the most critical domain of modern warfare, air superiority? These are not theoretical questions. They affect budgets, alliances, and military planning for decades. And here's the key point most headlines miss. This announcement isn't about jets alone. It's about timing, partnerships, and pressure. To understand how Pakistan pulled this off, and why it puts India in a strategic bind, we need to look behind the curtain at how China is producing the J-35, and why Pakistan was always going to be first in line. To understand why Pakistan could announce J-35 so confidently, you first need to understand how China builds fighters, and why timing matters more than headlines. China's J-35 program isn't a single aircraft rolling off a single production line. It's a dual-track system designed for both military readiness and strategic flexibility. The first track is the carrier-based J-35 for the Chinese Navy. This version is already in mass production because China needs it for its expanding aircraft carrier fleet. Carrier aviation is unforgiving. Only mature, reliable designs are allowed on decks. That alone tells us the J-35 platform has moved beyond experimentation. The second track is the Air Force variant. This version doesn't need carrier landing gear or reinforced structures, making it lighter and better suited for land-based operations. Once the naval version stabilized production, transitioning to the Air Force variant became far easier. That's the version Pakistan is set to receive. This matters because fighter exports don't happen at the prototype stage. Countries only export aircraft after production is stable, supply chains are secure, and training pipelines are ready. Pakistan's announcement signals that China has crossed all those thresholds. Now, why Pakistan? First, trust. China and Pakistan have decades of military cooperation. From joint exercises to shared production lines, this isn't a buyer-seller relationship, it's a strategic partnership. Second, combat relevance. Pakistan operates in a real high-pressure security environment. That makes it an ideal place to test systems, tactics, and integration, not in peacetime labs, but in realistic conditions. What works for Pakistan works elsewhere. Third, aligned objectives. China doesn't need to confront India directly to shape regional behavior. By enabling Pakistan, it applies pressure indirectly, forcing India to spend more, react faster, and make harder choices. That's why the J-35 isn't just a fighter jet. It's a geopolitical tool. Think of it like a chess move where you don't attack the queen, you attack the board. China doesn't need to deploy its own jets into South Asia. By empowering Pakistan, it changes the entire strategic environment without firing a shot. This is why calling the J-35 deal just arms sales misses the point. Arms sales are transactional. This is strategic positioning. And once you see it that way, the affordability question takes on a completely different meaning. Because if China is playing a long game, the price tag was never going to look like a normal export deal. That brings us to the biggest misconception of all, the idea that Pakistan is somehow too poor to operate fifth-generation fighters. As soon as the J-35 news broke, a familiar reaction spread online. How can Pakistan afford this? The assumption is simple. Fifth-generation fighters are expensive, and Pakistan's economy is under strain. Therefore, the deal must be fake, exaggerated, or unsustainable. That assumption is wrong because it treats this like a normal arms purchase. Pakistan is not buying the J-35 the way most countries buy fighter jets, by writing a massive check, taking on debt, and depending forever on the seller for parts and upgrades. Instead, Pakistan is following a model it has already used before, successfully. To understand this, look at the JF-17 program. When Pakistan partnered with China on the JF-17, it didn't just receive finished aircraft. It received technology transfer, local assembly, and eventually production rights. Over time, Pakistan learned how to build, maintain, and upgrade the platform itself. More importantly, it began exporting the fighter, earning foreign currency instead of just spending it. That history matters. China's approach to Pakistan is not maximum profit per jet. It's strategic subsidy. Fighters are sold at heavily discounted prices, and in some cases partially gifted, because the return China wants isn't immediate cash. It's long-term alignment, operational feedback, and regional leverage. Think of it like a tech company offering hardware at cost to lock users into its ecosystem. The value isn't in the device alone. It's in the network effect. For Pakistan, this changes the math completely. Instead of paying full market price like India does for Rafales or other imports, Pakistan spreads cost over time through local participation, lower lifecycle expenses, and shared development benefits. The key insight is this. Pakistan doesn't buy fighters the way India does. Pakistan co-builds capability. That's why financial comparisons miss the point. A country paying sticker price for a jet is not stronger than a country embedded in the production and upgrade cycle of that jet. And this also explains something important. China wouldn't offer this arrangement to just anyone. It only works when both sides plan to operate, adapt, and fight using the same systems for decades. Which brings us to the next advantage. What happens after the announcement? Training, integration, and how quietly prepared Pakistan already is for this transition. Buying a fighter jet is the loud part. Learning how to use it properly is the quiet part. And that's where real advantages are built. When Pakistan begins inducting the J-35, it won't start with a grand parade of dozens of aircraft. The rollout will likely follow a familiar, disciplined pattern. First comes pilot training in China. Pakistani pilots will train directly with Chinese instructors on simulators and early aircraft, learning not just how to fly the J-35, but how to fight as part of a stealth-era system. This matters because fifth-generation aircraft are not flown like older jets. Pilots are managers of information, not just stick and rudder operators. Next come early prototypes and small batches. These initial aircraft allow Pakistan to test maintenance routines, software behavior, weapons integration, and local operating conditions. This creates a feedback loop. Pakistan identifies what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. Those insights go straight back into the production and upgrade process. Now zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The J-35 is designed to work seamlessly with Chinese sensors, missiles, data links, and command systems. Pakistan already operates many of these systems. That means integration isn't an afterthought. It's baked in from day one. Doctrine matters here. When aircraft, weapons, and command systems are designed with the same philosophy, they speak the same language. Information flows faster, decisions are cleaner, mistakes are fewer. Now contrast this with India's situation. India operates fighters from multiple countries: Russia, France, Israel, and the United States. Each comes with its own software, maintenance philosophy, spare parts pipeline, and political conditions. Integrating them into a single, smooth system is not just difficult, it's a constant struggle. It's like trying to build one computer using parts that only work with different operating systems. This is the quiet advantage Pakistan is building. Not flashy numbers, not headline purchases, but coherence. And once a force achieves coherence, it becomes very hard to counter quickly, which leads directly to India's problem. If Pakistan is moving smoothly into a fifth-generation ecosystem, India is forced to respond, but its options come with heavy costs and uncomfortable trade-offs. That's where the real trap begins. On paper, India has two obvious options. The first is the Su-57 from Russia. It looks attractive at first glance. No Western political pressure, long-standing defense ties, and a price that appears lower than American alternatives. But honestly, the reality is more complicated. Russia's Su-57 program faces production limits, and Russia is currently fighting a major war that demands priority access to its best equipment. Even if Moscow agreed to sell, delivery timelines would be long, uncertain, and vulnerable to shifting battlefield needs. There's also the technical question. Stealth isn't just about shape. It's about materials, coatings, sensors, and software. Many analysts question whether the Su-57 truly delivers a decisive fifth-generation edge, especially against newer designs built from the ground up for low observability and data fusion. The second option is the F-35. This is the most advanced Western fighter in service, and there's little doubt the U.S. would consider selling it if the political and strategic conditions were right. But this option comes with its own heavy price. First, cost. Not just the aircraft, but decades of maintenance, upgrades, software access, and service contracts. Second, dependence. The F-35 is tightly controlled. Users don't fully own the aircraft's software or mission systems. Operational freedom is limited by agreements, permissions, and political alignment. And that leads to the uncomfortable truth. The more advanced the fighter India buys, the less control it may actually have over how it's used. Advanced jets come with strings, restricted mission profiles, oversight on upgrades, and limitations on who the aircraft can be used against. These aren't theoretical concerns. They're written into contracts and enforced through logistics and software. So India faces a dilemma. Buy Russian and risk delays and capability gaps. Buy American and gain technology, but surrender autonomy. Either way, the response is slow, expensive, and constrained. And this is before we even talk about whether these fighters can be kept combat-ready at high rates, because owning a prestige weapon is one thing. Keeping it ready for war is another entirely. That's where the next problem emerges: readiness, infrastructure, and the hidden costs that rarely make headlines. There's a big difference between owning an advanced fighter and being able to use it when it matters. This is where many surface-level comparisons fall apart. Even in the United States, the country that builds and operates the F-35, the aircraft struggles with readiness. Official reports have repeatedly shown that less than 60% of F-35s are mission-capable at any given time. The F-22, an older but elite fifth-generation jet, often performs even worse. And this is with the world's deepest defense budget, mature infrastructure, and direct access to manufacturers. Now apply that reality to India. Advanced fighters demand specialized hangars and climate control, constant software updates, secure data links, large inventories of precision spare parts, and highly trained maintenance crews. These aren't one-time costs. They are permanent obligations. India already struggles with maintenance bottlenecks across its current fleet. Aircraft are often grounded waiting for parts, approvals, or specialized servicing. Introducing an even more complex platform doesn't solve that problem, it magnifies it. This is why prestige weapons are dangerous. They look powerful on paper, but they quietly drain resources in the background. A useful real-world comparison is owning a Formula One car. Buying the car doesn't make you competitive. If you don't have the pit crew, the data engineers, the spare parts, and the track access, the car sits idle or breaks down. The same applies to air power. This is where past experience offers a warning. India's Rafale is not a bad aircraft. In capable hands, it's formidable. But when systems, training, coordination, and doctrine don't align perfectly, advantages shrink quickly. Encounters involving simpler platforms like the J-10 showed that operational systems matter more than brochure specifications. The core lesson is simple. Air power is not a showroom. It's a system. And systems only work when infrastructure, logistics, training, and doctrine move together. Without that, even the most advanced jet becomes an expensive symbol rather than a decisive weapon. Once you understand this, another problem becomes impossible to ignore. That question leads straight into the next overlooked constraint: resources, industry, and rare earths. There's one factor almost never mentioned in fighter jet debates, yet it quietly decides who can rearm fast and who cannot: resources, especially rare earth elements. Modern stealth fighters are not built like older jets. They rely on rare earths for advanced radar systems, electronic warfare components, high-performance magnets and motors and actuators, precision-guided weapons, stealth coatings, and sensor arrays. Without these materials, production slows or stops, no matter how much money you have. Here's the uncomfortable reality. China dominates the global rare earth supply chain. Not just mining, but refining and processing, the parts that actually matter. This gives China leverage that doesn't look like power on a map, but functions like a choke point in real life. Now look at the global context. The Russia-Ukraine war has already strained Western arms production. The United States and Europe are prioritizing NATO stockpiles, sending large quantities of weapons to Ukraine and struggling to replenish their own reserves. Production lines are running hot, but not fast enough. Even civilian industries feel the pressure. Automakers, electronics firms, and battery manufacturers have all warned about supply disruptions tied to rare earth access. Military production is even more sensitive. So where does that leave India? Even if India signs contracts for advanced fighters tomorrow, delivery is not guaranteed on India's schedule. Production slots, component availability, and political prioritization all matter. Countries closer to the core alliance networks move to the front of the line. Others wait. This exposes a deeper truth about modern military power. Strategic autonomy isn't something you declare in speeches. It's something you physically possess in supply chains. Pakistan's position looks different here. By operating within a Chinese-centered ecosystem, it avoids many of these bottlenecks. Components, upgrades, and weapons flow through the same industrial network. There's less friction, fewer veto points, and faster adaptation. India, by contrast, sits between systems, reliant on suppliers whose priorities are divided and whose production is already under stress. And once you see this layer, the air power story stops being about jets entirely. It becomes about industry, alignment, and preparedness. Which brings us to the final question. When all these layers are added together, technology, cost, training, readiness, and resources, who is actually prepared for the arms race that's now unfolding? That's where the story ends. When you put all the pieces together, a clear picture emerges. And it's not the one most headlines suggest. This isn't simply a story about Pakistan buying new jets or India feeling embarrassed online. It's about who is structurally prepared for modern air warfare and who is being forced into reaction mode. Pakistan's path is calculated. It gains fifth-generation capability without bankrupting itself because it operates inside a system where cost, training, upgrades, and supply chains are shared. China absorbs part of the financial burden, gains real-world operational feedback, and reshapes the regional balance without direct confrontation. It's efficient, quiet, and strategic. China, meanwhile, achieves something even more valuable than selling aircraft. It tests doctrine, integration, and industrial strength indirectly. Every system Pakistan fields becomes proof that Chinese platforms can operate outside China, under real pressure, against real opponents. India, on the other hand, is pushed into a narrow corridor of choices. To respond, it must either spend enormous sums on foreign platforms it doesn't fully control, accept long delays and uncertain production, or attempt to bridge the gap with a fragmented fleet and strained infrastructure. None of these options are quick, none are cheap, and none restore initiative. This is why framing the situation as humiliation misses the deeper truth. The issue isn't pride, it's structure. Modern air superiority doesn't belong to the country with the loudest announcements or the most expensive imports. It belongs to the country with integrated systems, reliable supply chains, aligned partners, and doctrine designed for the weapons it actually operates. In today's world, air power is built like an ecosystem, not a trophy case. That's the real lesson of Pakistan's J-35 announcement. It signals the start of an arms race, but one where only one side entered fully prepared. So the next time you see flashy comparisons, slide decks, or speculative videos about which jet is better, ask a harder question. Who can actually deploy, sustain, and fight with these systems when it counts? If you want more breakdowns like this, cutting through hype and focusing on structure, strategy, and reality, make sure to subscribe. In the next episode, we'll look at how stealth fighters really perform against modern air defenses, and why many popular myths don't survive first contact with reality.